We hope that you enjoy this message. For additional talks, please visit abcchurch.com.
I want to begin today by just asking you guys to think back over the journey of your life, to think back to maybe your teenage years, or if you're not a teenager yet, maybe to think back, just go back a few years and think back to that time. When you were a teenager, how did you think that your life was going to turn out? What did you think the path would look like that you were on? Is your life the way that you thought it would be way back then? Maybe you had certain aspirations in mind. Maybe you thought that you'd be like a professional athlete. A lot of teenagers have that as a goal. Possibly you thought, that you're going to have a certain career path. Maybe you thought you'd attend a certain college, or maybe you thought you'd marry a specific person back then. Has your life turned out the way that you thought that it would? I remember for me, right around the time I was 16 or so, my focus was on becoming a professional soccer player. That's what I wanted to become at that point in time. And I was pretty serious. I was focused. I was going after it. I remember 16 years old, my family and I, we lived in Canada, and my parents came and shared that although we lived in Canada, they were about to move back to Scotland. They gave me an option. My older siblings were going to stay in Canada and go to university. I could stay with them for a little while longer, or if I wanted to, I could come and move to Scotland with my parents. Great choice at that time. I was just focused. I wanted to become a professional soccer player, so I figured if I'm going to become a professional soccer player, I'm not going to have much of a professional soccer career in the Canadian Soccer League, so I better move over to Scotland. So I went and just worked at it and pursued it. After about a year, came a detour. And the detour was that I realized that although I had some good soccer skills, they weren't quite at the place that they would have needed to be in order to become a professional soccer player. So adjusted the pattern, the course. Next, I was going to become an architect, okay? Went and pursued a diploma in construction surveying, earned that, got accepted into structural engineering at the University of Aberdeen. And then another detour. My heart just wasn't saying that was the direction that I was being called into. So I ended up going and attending a Bible college back in Canada. I thought I'd become a youth pastor, probably stay in Canada. Then I finished college and was hired by a church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So all of a sudden I'm in the States, another detour. Then to Houston, then to Colorado Springs. When I think back to that time, 16 years old, and my aspirations, there is no way, not in a million years could I imagine that my life would have taken the path that it has. There have been many detours along the way. My guess is that probably for you, there's probably some similarities, maybe different types of detours, but I would guess that all of us have had detours in life that have brought us to a place that may be different than what we had initially envisioned back in our teenage years. Some of the detours that we walk through can be really positive and exciting, take us down a good path. Some of the detours that we walk through can be a little bit more challenging, a little harder to walk through. I think of things like walking through divorce, broken families, maybe a season of undesired singleness, a season of infertility, dealing with anxiety or depression, possibly losing a job. Maybe you've experienced some of these. Having financial struggles or legal struggles. Have you experienced any of those detours in your life? I think throughout our lives, inevitably we'll walk through different detours. And I think it can be really helpful when it comes to that process, when it comes to that journey, just to have a biblical perspective when it comes to navigating those detours that I think can really be helpful. If you're following along your notes, point number 1 today is that life can take many unexpected detours. So if there's a person in the Bible that comes to mind whenever it comes to the topic or the theme of detours, I think of Joseph. Not Jesus' dad, but Joseph from the Old Testament, Joseph that had, maybe you've heard he's been given this amazing Technicolor dream coat, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But Joseph is somebody who walked through quite a few different detours within his life, navigated them pretty well, I would say, Today we're going to take a look at the first detour that he ended up walking through. And it's found in Genesis chapter 37. We're going to walk through it just verse by verse, but we'll start in verse 2, Genesis 37, verse 2. It says this: "This is the account of Jacob's family line." So Jacob is Joseph's father. It's his dad, okay? This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. So here we are, we got Joseph. His dad is Jacob, and he's around 17 years old. I would bet that around that time, 17, there's not a chance that Joseph would have thought that his life was going to go in the direction that it ended up going. We learn a little bit about his family here. Jacob is the dad, okay? And Jacob has quite a few different sons. He's got 12 sons. Joseph is the 11th of the 12. I think there's some sisters as well. But big family, right? And there's 12 sons, but they come from 4 different mothers, okay? And Jacob has 4 wives. Interesting dynamics there. I don't know if you've ever heard somebody describe their family as kind of having the fun and dysfunction, right? This is a family that certainly has quite a lot of dysfunction within it. And we'll talk about that in a little bit when it comes to just some of the dynamics that they end up walking through and that Joseph ends up navigating through. His family's kind of messy, twisted, blended, dysfunctional, and we'll get to see quite a bit of that in a second. So the passage continues, Genesis 37:2. It says this: "He," which is Joseph, brought their father a bad report about them, about his brothers. So what we've got is we've got Joseph and his brothers. They're out taking care of some sheep in a field. And Joseph comes back and he gives his dad Jacob a really bad report about his brothers, about their behavior, about the things that they've been doing. You ever had somebody rat on you before? A tattletale? I remember at one point when I was in elementary school, this was really dumb, but we were walking home from school one day, and as we're walking down this path, all of a sudden we see a bunch of kids that are on the top of this hill, and they're throwing snowballs at this apartment complex, right? So we walk over and we get there and we see that what they're actually doing is they're throwing snowballs at this girl that's trying to get into her house. I don't know why. This is so dumb. We should have just come along and said, "Guys, you got to cut it out." But instead of doing that, what we did was we picked up some snowballs and started throwing them too, right? Really bad, okay? Well, all of a sudden, as we're throwing these snowballs, the door just bursts open and this heroic dad grabs his daughter and pulls her inside, and then all of a sudden he starts hauling it after us, right? Just comes after us. We start running as fast as we can to try to get away from this dad. My friend, he goes and he hides underneath this parked car. I keep walking, and I get to this path, and I start walking up this little pathway that goes up towards our house. And the dad comes, he sees my friend under the car. He ends up grabbing a hold of my friend. He's got him by the back of his jacket. And they start walking up this path that I'm on. And I'm just walking along the path, trying to pretend as though I had nothing to do with any of this, not looking at any of them. And, he's got my friend and walking along, and as they come up, they're walking faster than I am. He goes to my friend, "Was he part of this?" And I'm just standing there going, "Come on, surely you're not going to do it." "Was he part of this?" And my friend goes, "Yep." He grabs a hold of my jacket too. He's got both of us, right? He takes us to our houses and, man, turns us into our moms. We got in so much trouble. I remember having to write several pages of notes. "I will not throw snowballs at girls." 200 lines. Oh, it stinks to be ratted out by someone, doesn't it? What does it do to your heart when it comes to them? Just puts you in the position where you're not too happy with them, where you're frustrated with them. And we've got a bit of that element going on within this passage as well. I'm sure that Joseph's brothers were frustrated with this little rat, this little tattletale. So Genesis 37:3, we continue on. It says, now Israel, and that's just another name for Jacob, for the father. I think it's a little bit confusing, but Israel, Jacob, same guy. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. I don't think it's ever a good idea to let your kids know that one of them is your favorite, right? Bad idea. And hopefully you love them all equally. But in this scenario, you've got one son that's the favorite, and that's Joseph. And the other brothers, I'm sure, can feel it. And Joseph, or Jacob, expresses this to them as well. So interesting dynamics here. You've got, I think one of the reasons why Joseph was probably the favorite is it mentions that he was born to Jacob in his old age, but I think Jacob really loved Joseph's mom, Rachel. There was an extra special love there, and I think that was probably part of it as well. So to express his love, to show his love, how much he appreciates and loves Joseph, what he does is he ends up giving him this coat. Okay, it's called an ornate coat. And if you grew up in Sunday school, you'd heard the colorful coat, the Technicolor dream coat. It may have been colorful. It may not have been colorful. I think the thing that set it apart was that it was different from the robes or the coats that his brothers had. What his brothers had, more or less, was like a piece of fabric with like a hole cut in the top that would go over their head, and that was like their robe, or that was their coat. Joseph, he has like an ornate coat. His is a fancier coat. His is a lot nicer. It's sewn together, stitched together in a more quality way. It's got, rather than just being a piece of fabric, it's got sleeves on the end of it. It goes down longer. It's a really nice coat. If his brother's coats were like Goodwill, Joseph, he gets the Gucci coat, okay? Really nice coat. And his brothers, see this gift, know that Joseph is the favorite of the father, and they just despise him. They hate him as a result of it. Passage continues in verse 4. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. So there's an incredible amount of jealousy here from the brothers towards Joseph, the favorite. They have a hatred towards him. I think another element within the coat is that it's not just about the coat. It actually symbolizes some additional items that when it came to the inheritance, although Joseph was 11th in line, he was actually going to receive some favor there and probably some additional inheritance as well when it came to that. So another reason for them to hate him. So we continue on, and the next thing that happens is there's a dream that comes. Genesis 37:5, it says, Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. So the next thing that happens, it just keeps piling on top of each other. The next thing that happens is Joseph ends up having a dream, and in the dream, what takes place is all of his brothers are like bowing down to him, to like worship him. And pretty much what he does is he goes and he tells the brothers what took place within the dream. Really bad move, right? Just make them hate him even more. He has a second dream. And in the second dream, this time, all of the brothers are bowing down to him, and his mom and dad are also bowing down to him. And he goes and he shares that with all of them. And then they're even more frustrated with him. Really bad situation. You talk about, it's probably a careless move, not a very wise move. But all of this, and all of the emotion, all of the hatred, it brings us to the point where it sets up the stage for Joseph's first detour. We're going to skip ahead a little bit in the story. In Genesis 37:17-18, what we have is we have a passage where Joseph's brothers are sent out to do some work. And then Joseph is sent out to go and to check on them. So this is what happens. It says, so Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. So I think this is interesting because what's taking place here is Joseph's brothers get sent out to go and to do some work by the dad. I'm not sure why Joseph doesn't get sent out, but it seems like he's got some favoritism here, obviously. He's not sent out to go and do the work. He's at home, kind of living the cushy, somewhat entitled life. But then all of a sudden, Jacob, the dad, is looking, going, okay, he's got concerns that maybe the other brothers aren't working as hard as they should. Maybe they're slacking off. So what he does is he sends Joseph to go and check on them. So Joseph goes out to check on them. He walks a long way to get to them. It's like miles and miles and miles. And they see him coming. And as they see him coming, what ends up happening is just within their hearts, all of the emotions begin to boil to the surface. They begin to get so angry, frustrated with that little rat, that little favorite. And what they decide to do is they're going to kill him. They put together a plan to kill their brother. Genesis 37, 23 to 24 says, so when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe that he was wearing. And they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it. So they see him coming. They're frustrated. They're furious with him. They come up with this plan. They're going to kill him. When he comes, they strip the robe off of him. They probably beat him, grab him, throw him into this empty water well. And their thought is that they'll leave him there to die. Have you ever had a moment in your life where somebody made a decision that just instantly impacted your life and sent it in a different direction? An instant detour as a result of someone else's choice. Possibly you can relate to a little bit to what Joseph is walking through in this. Well, after a little bit of time, the brothers rethink the plan and they think, why would we just kill him in this way? Why not profit from him? Let's take him and let's sell him into slavery. So that's what they end up doing. They end up selling him into slavery in Egypt. Genesis 37, 36 says, meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. If there's a person that would understand challenging detours, it would certainly be Joseph, wouldn't it? What a crazy detour he's on at this point in his life. I think that there are some insights that we can pull from his life that we can apply to ours, that we can carry with us when it comes to just our journey of walking through detours. Point number 2 is that we're going to look at some insights to help us navigate detours. So the first insight that we're going to look at is point number 1, which is this. Detours have several causes. I think that there are probably many things that lead towards detours within our lives, but 3 specifically are these. Point A is one cause that can lead to detours in our lives are our own choices. Okay, sometimes we'll make some really great choices in life. When it comes to those choices, they can send us down pathways that can open up really great detours, that can bring some good things about in our lives. But sometimes we make really poor choices as well that bring us into some detours that can be really difficult. Sometimes we make some sinful choices that can lead us down paths that are pretty negative. The second cause of detours is B, the impact of other people's choices on us. Have you ever been in the position that somebody else has made a choice and that choice has impacted your life in a significant way and it sent you on a detour? Possibly you can relate to that. But the third cause is God's hand directing us. I think there are times that God has specific plans in place and he'll begin to close certain doors. He'll begin to open certain doors. And we may be on a detour as a result of that, as he brings us to the place that he wants us to get to. When you look at Joseph's life, which of these 3 do you think led to his detour? Was it his choices? Did I'm sure he made some choices that certainly had an impact on his brothers, didn't he? I'd say that's definitely a factor within it. Was it the choices of others? His brothers certainly made some choices that had a significant impact on his life and sent him on a detour, so I would say, yeah. Was it God's hand within his life working? I think it's interesting because later on in the story, as we jump ahead, we see Joseph in this point of kind of reflecting on his life. He's reunited with his brothers, and he has this moment where he says this to him in Genesis 50:20. He says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." When it comes to Joseph's detour, what was it? Was it A, B, or C? I think probably a bit of all of them, right? His decisions certainly led to some of the elements of detour. His brother's decisions certainly did. And it seems like God's hand was in it as well. Point number 2 is God can develop us through our detours. Romans 5:3-4 says this. It says, "We also rejoice in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character. And character, hope." Let me read that one more time. "We also rejoice in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character. And character, hope." To me, it's fascinating the way that God can take something that was intended for harm and bring good out of it. We just read a passage that mentioned that. It's amazing how in the challenging times that we go through, even moments of suffering, he's able to somehow work redemptively in it and bring out some really good things within our lives. He can help us to grow and learn and prepare us for the things that are to come. Look at Joseph. Ultimately he becomes the second most powerful person in all of Egypt. Do you think that 17-year-old Joseph would have been ready for that? Not a chance, right? But all of a sudden he ends up going through all of these detours. And through the process of walking through these detours, what ends up happening is God ends up developing him and strengthening him and helping him to learn different things. He prepares him for what's to come. I think the same can be true for us when it comes to detours that we walk through and some of the challenges that we walk through in life. That God can work through those things redemptively to help us grow, to develop us into what he wants us to become. I think for us at times, one challenge that we have to try to avoid in the process is just, especially in our culture, trying to avoid kind of a victim mentality when we're walking through challenging scenarios. Too often when we walk through difficulty, when things aren't going the way that we had hoped they would, when we're experiencing some discomfort, the first thing that we do is we start looking for somebody to blame, right? We're ticked off. We want to look out and blame somebody else for what we're walking through. We take on kind of this victim mentality. The problem with the victim mentality is that oftentimes it just kind of locks us in this prison. And we'll never get to the point that we walk in a victor mentality. It's important for us when we walk through detours, when we walk through challenges, not to take on a victim mindset, but rather to keep our eyes on the Lord, to keep our hearts in the right place, to trust that he can bring out some really good things, to look for the ways that he's moving within our lives, the ways that he wants to develop us and strengthen us and help us grow for the next leg of our journey. Point 3 is that detours can reroute us to destinations that we'd never arrive at on our own. This would be a good time for the band to come as well. Again, point 3, detours can reroute us to destinations that we'd never arrive at on our own. Looking at Joseph's life, do you think that he ever would have made it to Egypt had he not gone through these detours? I doubt it. He's got this pretty cushy life that he's living. He's the favorite, living somewhat of an entitled life, getting special treatment from his dad. He was pretty comfortable. I don't think that he would have taken the path to Egypt. Egypt's a pagan nation. I don't think he would have gone and worked for a pagan government. And if he hadn't, could God have done the things that he wanted to do through him? He was pretty comfortable when it came to life. But all of a sudden he begins to walk through these detours. And as he does, God's able to bring him to the place that he needs him to be in. Possibly for you can relate to that as well. And when it comes to your life, maybe you've seen God work in different ways. Maybe for you it was a job. Maybe at some point in your life you experienced a layoff, or maybe downsizing, or maybe there were financial pressures within the company that you were working for. And in that moment, maybe you had to adjust, begin to look for a new opportunity, a new job. And when you found that new job, something amazing happened. All of a sudden you had a new lease on life, a new challenge. You begin to be stretched and to grow and to begin to fulfill the potential. Had the downsizing, had the layoff not happened, would you have gotten there? Would you have taken that step? Possibly for you, it was a relationship. A relationship came to an end. And in that moment, there was pain and there was discomfort, and all of a sudden you were sent on a detour, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, you met somebody else. And through all that you walked through in that detour, you're kind of being prepared. You were growing in different ways that maybe you never would have been appealing to the person that you ended up being in a relationship with. And all of a sudden, at that point in life, you're just going, thank you, God, so much for not letting that other relationship take place. I'm so excited to be in this relationship, and this is amazing. Possibly for you, you hit rock bottom at some point in time. And when you hit rock bottom, all of a sudden, it was the point that you came into a relationship with Jesus and got to experience just the love that he gives, his grace. Possibly at that point in time, you came across ABC Church, got connected here. Would you ever have ended up in the location that you did had you not walked through the detour? So we wrap things up today. What I want to just do is just say this to you guys. Possibly today you're walking through a detour in life. And if you are, or if you have one coming up, because I feel like we all end up going through detours, possibly you'll have a detour that takes place in the next several days, in the next several weeks, and months ahead. Just want to challenge you and encourage you in this way. When you walk through your detours, make sure that you keep your heart in the right place. And make sure that you keep your eyes in the right place. It's amazing when we have the right perspective, what God is able to do within our lives, how he can come and how he can shape us, how he can help us to grow, how he can develop us, how he can prepare us for the next step in life, for the next thing that he wants to take us on to. It's so important for us that we keep our eyes on him and that we keep our hearts in the right place, rather than slipping into the temptation of entering into a victim mentality. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Father, just thank you for Joseph. We thank you for his life. God, it's helpful to get to just read about the things that he walked through. Read about some of the strange little intricacies within his family, the details, the dynamics that are there, some of the mistakes that he probably made. But Lord, as I look at his life and just watch his heart as he walks through these detours, it's amazing how he really did seem to keep his heart in the right place, and he did seem to keep his eyes fixed on you. And Lord, I pray that when it comes to our detours, when it comes to the challenges that we walk through in life, that we would follow his lead, that we would keep our hearts in the right place, that we would keep our eyes on you. Lord, I pray that you would come and you would move within our lives. I pray that you would prepare us for what's to come, for the things that you want to do in our lives and for the things that you want to do through our lives. We love you, Father. We're grateful for your work within our lives and that you're with us through all of the highs and through all of the lows. And we pray this in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen. Amen.
We hope you've enjoyed this message. For additional talks, please visit abcchurch.com.